Hello and welcome to the second channel for Tales from the Trip. I'm your host, Trip Keeper, and on today's video, we're going to be doing Frightening Trip Reports to Fall Asleep to, Volume 5. Now, I got a headache. Hopefully by reading stories, it'll make my headache go away. Not going to say it will, but it's not terrible. That's not the worst thing. But yeah, we actually only have 3 stories here today, but the first one, very, very long. It's going to be a very long trip report. I've been wanting to read this one, and I totally forgot to do it when I made the fentanyl video on my main channel, so I'm going to do it here, because I don't know the next time I'll do a fentanyl video. But we actually have, or I actually have a similar video coming on the main channel Tuesday. Be on the lookout for that. But yeah, this is Volume 5. Hopefully it's Volume 5. I forgot. I know we've had 3 so far. I think 4, yeah, it's 5. All right. But also, I know there's a lot of people asking, like, oh, do you do a face reveal? Where's your face reveal? I posted it a couple times on my Instagram, and I just did another one today. So if you want to go look, go follow me on there. And, well, you don't have to follow me, but go on there, look at it, and then you'll see. And then you'll be like, whoa, you're not an emo skinny boy? You got that right. I am not. I'm a country boy. Actually, I'm not too country. I just love country music, and I live in northern Ohio, so, I mean, not very country up there. Oh, shit. Turn off my damn volume on that bitch. All right, this one is called Accidental Fentanyl Overdose. Now, this is from over 2 years ago, and it's by Optimal Distance 622, so shout out them. It's very long. They commented on it saying that it was actually a research paper they wrote, so some of the words might not be, you know, what it's usually like slang, but yeah, we'll get through it. At least that's what I thought it said. I don't know for sure. So something about said a different word for a plug, so I just want to tell you guys that in case something was confusing. But all right, let's get this started. It is currently, all right, we're a little over 2 minutes in, so yeah. As far as this one goes, then that'll decide if I should read 2 or 3. If I'm like, who knows, if it's past 30 minutes, or maybe a little under 30 minutes, I'll read the rest of the 2. But if this goes to like 40 minutes somehow, I don't think it will. That's way too long. But then we won't continue anymore. We'll just read this one and maybe a small one. But yeah. All right. Accidental fentanyl overdose. January 21st, 2021, 8 p.m. I find myself bored on a Thursday night. I'm currently quarantined from school on a week break due to COVID exposure. Tuesday night, I had taken acid and tripped until the middle of the day on Wednesday. While it was a great time, I was once again bored. I decided to hit up one of my dealers and pick up 5 Klonopin pills. I planned on taking 1 or 2 tonight and saving the other 3 for a rainy day. January 21st, 2021, 11 p.m. All right, I'm not going to read the dates until it changes. All right, I'm just going to go by PMs and AMs. I had just gotten back home from going across town for these K-pins. I knew they were benzodiazepines and I had taken Xanax before, so I was under the impression that these were going to be just like Xanax. They were not. I decided to pop one as I pulled into my driveway. It was sweet, unlike Xanax, which has a horribly bitter taste. Since the pill was sweet, I had a few apprehensive thoughts. It also almost instantly dissolved in my tongue, which Xanax doesn't. I've actually taken the let me move my chair really quick. I've taken the dissolved ones. Those actually, yeah, those do taste good. And when I used to take the Zoloft, dude, it would smell like candy. It was great. That was the best part about it. And the not getting depression was the second best part. I looked up how Klonopins are supposed to taste and dissolve and found out that it's not abnormal for them to do that. After doing a little homework over the drug, I calmed myself down because I knew I was going to be okay. 11:45 p.m. I was not feeling the K-pin I popped from earlier, so I decided to take another. I've been playing video games since I had gotten home from the dealer's house. The second one tasted just like the last one. Getting pills on the street is very risky, but since these were consistent, I didn't think much of them. After this part, I do not remember anything myself. Everything further stated will all be inferences based on what other people have told me. One thing to note is that for most people, benzodiazepines will bring an overwhelming sense of fatigue and need for sleep. Benzos never had this effect on me, possibly due to some chemical imbalance in my brain. I would black out instead of going to sleep. All right, we're on another day, January 22nd, 2021, 2 a.m. By this time, I was barred out of my mind. Barred, slang for being heavily intoxicated from benzodiazepines. I'm sure most of you know that, but they put that in there. Just want to read everything, basically. Somewhere around here, I decided to take another K-Pin. I don't remember how this one felt because the only way I knew how I took it was I only had 2 left from the 5 I had earlier. That's the worst thing about benzos. You take one, you take another, you take another, and take another, and they're all gone. And then you blame other people for taking them. All right, this is the next one. So 3 p.m. Wow, we're going from 2 a.m. to 3 p.m. By this time, I think I was either still awake or had just woken up. I was still heavily inebriated from the K-Pins earlier during the night. I do not remember getting ready for the morning, but I do remember leaving my house to go to my friend's house. I brought the K-Pins with me to offer a few to him. 3:30 p.m. I made it to my friend's house, and after ringing his doorbell, he answered the door for me. He had just gotten home from school, and his parents were not home yet. We smoked marijuana for a few minutes, which sends me into outer space once again. Benzos and tetrahydrocarbonyl, THC, have a sort of synergy that I thought was incredible. The anxiety that the weed might bring me is instantly wiped away from the K-Pins. Around 3:45, my friend tells me he needs to go to physical therapy. I tell him I can take him, and we head to the place that used to be located around the new homeland. I pulled into the front parking spots and offered him 2 of the other K-Pins I had. He was surprised to see I had them, and he was excited. I told him pop these 2 guys, and by the time you walk back out of those doors, you'll be retarded. Don't cancel me for saying that. It was in the video, in the story. He takes the 2 pills and goes inside. I decided to find someone else to smoke with while he's doing the physical therapy. 5 p.m. My friend walks out of his physical therapist's office, and I'm parked in the same spot I was in when he walked in. At this point, I'm still heavily intoxicated from the 3 K-Pins I had taken more than 12 hours ago. When he hopped in my car, it was obvious that it started to hit him pretty hard. He exclaims how difficult the past 20 minutes in the physical therapist's office was. He is in fact acting much stupider, more so on point with me now. Okay, for some reason this just clicked in my head that going to a physical therapist's office while you're on Klonopins, that is not a good idea. 5:15 p.m. By the time me and my buddy had found someone else to smoke and possibly sell a little marijuana to, she said she wasn't interested in buying, but is more than happy to have a smoke session with us. We head over and get there around 5:20 p.m. and we spark up. By the time we're done, I cannot move myself out of the driver's seat. I could hardly move any of my muscles, and my friend had to pick me up out of there and place me in the passenger seat. 6 p.m. At this time, my friend and I are just cruising around in my car, both of us extremely intoxicated. I begged him to just keep driving because by this time, I had not eaten anything since the previous day. I also had not slept the previous night. I also had not changed out of my clothes from yesterday. I'm absolutely filthy. Eventually, we head back to his house, and I almost instantly pass out on his brother's bed. I was unaware of it because I was sleeping, but while I was sleeping, his mother seemed to know something was up with me, just falling asleep instantly. I usually greeted her with a hug and a conversation, but today I went straight to bed. My friend had told his mom I was just exhausted, which I most definitely was. Yes, you were. 8 p.m. Around this time, I woke up from my slumber. I think I got myself a bowl of cereal from my friend's pantry and started munching immediately. At this point, this was the only food I've had since sometime the previous day. I kept my composure pretty well, so as soon as I woke up, his mom's suspicions were quickly erased. 8:15 p.m. We leave my friend's house, and I end up selling someone some marijuana. That was a lot of sums and S's. We then get picked up by another party, and Ozzy just joined up here on the table. Hi, Ozzy. How you doing? I remember this part. Please don't rub it up against the computer. You're gonna exit out, please. One time I was editing, and he exited out, and I didn't save it. I was like, you motherfucker. All right. I remember this part, and this is when I threw up at church. Twice. Oh, now we're at church, huh? Driving past the church by Walmart, I remember I would get waves of nausea that would increase in severity every time they hit. 2 of the waves were too much for me to handle. I didn't even throw up inside the car, which was a good thing. Check my 9 p.m. This is another part I have zero recollection of, but apparently I was at another friend's house with about 5 or 6 other people. We were all smoking and they decided that they wanted some LSD. I told them I can get them some for $15 a tab each. Whoa, that's overpriced nowadays. Price of drugs gone down, price of houses went way up. Coincidence? While the price for buying bulk tabs is much lower than the rate I offered, I wanted to make some money off of this deal. They were skeptical at first, but I eventually got them to buy into it. The dealer ended up being out of town, so I wasn't able to get them any LSD, and that was pretty lame, but it was alright. I had made around $70 that day, and I was quite happy with what I had. 9:45 p.m. At this time, I was finally coming down from the K-pins I had taken the night before. There's a motorcycle outside. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's bothering the fuck out of me. This is where I start to remember some things and regain functionality. I was able to appear much more normal than I had before. I was able to think semi-clearly. My buddy and I were going back to my house, and we wanted to pick up some more Xanax before we got to my house. Though our usual dealers for Xans happened to also be out of town, therefore we were out of luck. We get back to my house and stay there for about 30 minutes before he wants to crash at his place, so I took him home at around 10:20 p.m. 11 p.m. I was almost completely blacked out again for this part of the story, which is terrible because I was alone and nobody else knew what I was doing. But from what I pieced together is that once I dropped my friend off, I went on a slew of bad decisions. I think I started dealing for one of my plugs. Plug is slang for dealer. Oh my god. Very valuable information right there. If you didn't know. For a couple serves so I can get a discount on an M30 pill. Oh shit. Now at the time I was still severely intoxicated, but I was able to act normal. After the few serves, I went back to my plug and he gave me the pill at a discounted price. After this, it's probably around 11:50 and I want to go back home. I have recollection of being pulled over by tumbleweeds, but that was hardly a problem to me, even though I was risking a felony possession of prescription drugs, as well as driving under the influence. But the cops saw nothing wrong and told me to head home, which was only maybe a 2-minute drive away. I got home and say hi to my dad and go up to my room. Once I got to my room, I took out the pill, which was pretty sizable. I was trying to figure out how I was going to divide it up. Would I take a fourth? Would I take a half? I decided to say screw it, and I took the whole thing. I told myself, hey, worst comes to worst, I gotta sleep it off if it makes me feel bad. I took a hit of my dab pen and loaded up Paper Mario. January, unknown date, unknown time. Alright, we gotta read that differently now. When I wake up, I'm extremely groggy. I could feel that time has passed. Where am I? I could feel this massive thing on my head, and I'm not sure what it is. My eyes have not adjusted to the light quite yet, and I'm pretty loopy. My back is in immense pain. I feel like I haven't moved for 3 days. I'm greeted by a male nurse, and I decide to let him know that I need to pee. He tells me to go on ahead. After this, I drift back off into the abyss of nothingness. Unknown date, nighttime. January, of course. I wake up again, and this time I'm a little more aware. I could see that I'm in a hospital bed, but I don't know why. I also realize how many wires are attached to me as well. I also realize how many wires are attached to me, as well as the sheer amount of machines I'm hooked up to. I could tell that I'm in the ICU unit. U-unit? Okay. I could see my parents in the corner of the room, as well as to my right is a nurse. My head is absolutely throbbing from the unknown thing on my head. It has almost doubled the size of my head, and it is extraordinarily uncomfortable. I can see out the window, and it looks very dark out, like the dead of night. The nurse introduces herself to me once she realizes that I'm waking up. Her name is Gladys, which is my great-grandmother's name. This is an interesting coincidence because my great-grandmother has been deceased for a few years. She died in 2013 at the age of 102. At this point, I'd never met anyone else that shared the same name with her. There's Gladys Knight, but that's not how you spell it this way. It's a U.S. January, unknown date, morning. I wake up to a male nurse taking my vitals. Apparently, I'm nowhere near out of the woods yet. I'm still completely confused. I not only was confused on how I got here, but why I'm here in the first place. I keep asking my parents how I got here, and they keep saying that the doctors informed them not to tell me until they know I'm going to be alright. January unknown date, midday. Pretty much all I could do is watch the A&E channel that's playing Strange Addictions. I try to force my lunch down, but it's super difficult because even just chewing a little bit of food makes me feel like I need to throw up. The hospital food wasn't too bad. It was cafeteria food, but it was definitely leaps and bounds better than the school cafeteria. I order apple juice repeatedly because it's one of the only things that doesn't make me feel sick. January unknown date, nighttime. It's really difficult to move and I really need to pee. The problem is I can't get out of bed and I have to pee inside of a little plastic half-gallon jug, laying down, which was not a good time because it got all over me. Gross. They said gross, not me. I had to hide the fact that I just spilt pee on myself, but I still had to pee. I filled this little half-gallon so much that on its side it was able to spill. This is when I learned I cannot simply hold all my urine for the end of the day. I knew I couldn't avoid peeing in this thing. I was completely demoralized. I ended up going back to sleep in my urine-covered sheets, falling backwards on my bed. This was no way to live under any circumstances, I thought to myself. Morning. I'm just going to say whatever it is. I just keep saying January unknown date. It's just like how we were doing with the time. So this is morning. I wake up to my usual two and a half star breakfast in bed. The hospital bed was absolutely killing my back. I made it my goal today that I was going to get up and go pee in the bathroom at the other end of the room. I keep messing up, dude. While it was maybe only about 8 or 9 steps away from me, that felt like 8 or 9 miles. I asked for the urine jug and did my best to stand up. Now I shouldn't have done this because I was attached to a bunch of machines, but I really didn't care at this point. When I stood up, I was immediately jolted back from all the stuff I was attached to. I then moved all the machines and tried to stand up again. I threw my legs over the side of the bed towards the window and placed my feet down on the cold tile floor. My knees instantly buckled and I almost fell. I was discreet enough that the nurse in my room didn't notice anything with their back turned. I did my best to halfway stand, bracing myself with my right hand on the side of the bed. This was a great idea because this way the jug wasn't laying down and therefore it could be filled more without the risk of any coming out. This was a victory for me. I handed the jug of urine to the nurse and she measured how much I had excreted. After this, I have a bath in bed, which really was just washing my chest and lower half of my body with a rag and some Dawn dish soap. What a shower. Oh boy, this is a long ass paragraph. I'm gonna fucking go on the same lines. Oh, yeah. Wall of text, but hey, it's formatted very nice, except for this paragraph. This is way too long. Alright, midday. I've been informed that the BAT, Behavioral Assessment Team, was coming to question me, as well as my mental stability. I knew this conversation would be the difference in me being discharged from the hospital and going home, and going to a 3-month rehab program. Stuck in my thoughts, I was pondering the gravity of the situation. I wasn't too worried because I can usually talk my way out of bad situations, but this one I knew might be unavoidable considering the state I was in. I was in a hospital gown that hardly had a backside on it. I had these socks on that had smiley faces with rubber pads on the bottom, and then on top of those I hadn't had a real shower in what almost felt like a week. I also couldn't confidently stand, so this was definitely going to be an uphill battle. The BAT team, one of the best in their department, had been assigned to me. This felt like psychological pressure disguised as reassurance. Their capabilities only worried me more. I hobbled myself over to a reclining chair and waited for the behavioral assessment team to show up. After about 5 minutes of waiting for them, they showed up. The term team was a little misleading. It was only one lady. However, this lady was quite the character. She came in with these big glasses that hung over her face. She had a hippie bandana on that was multicolored. She was quite overweight, and all in all, she did not look like what I thought she would. She had this lanyard with Batman on it, and she introduced herself. I've forgotten her name since this has happened, but she sat down at the chair across from me and started questioning. The first question she asked was how I ended up in the hospital in the first place. I told her I had taken an M30 pill, thinking it was just an oxycodone pill instead of fentanyl. By this time, I realized why I was there, but I don't remember how I figured it out or if I was told by my parents. She exclaimed that a lot of people have been sent to the hospital because of them, and that she's extremely surprised I survived after taking a whole pill. It went on to the next line, sorry. She explained how she was previously addicted to heroin and meth, so she's nowhere near new to hearing any of this stuff. All right, that was totally One of the things I vividly remember from this conversation was how one of her friends had cocaine and it was cut with fiberglass. Oh God. Oh no. Oh God. Oh my God. That is pure hell right there. All right, let me read that again for you guys. Oh my God. One of the things I vividly remember from this conversation was how one of her friends had cocaine and it was cut with fiberglass. As soon as her friend snorted the blow is slang for cocaine. Okay, if I see that shit, I'm skipping it. Of course, we all know. It was as if his head exploded. Blood started pouring out of his eyes, mouth, and nose. He didn't instantly die later. He died about 2 minutes later after shredding all of his mucous membranes in his head from the fiberglass. He could hardly make a noise after he snorted it. That is when the behavioral assessment team lady knew she needed to turn her life around. She questioned me further about if my overdose was on purpose or not, and I told her it was not on purpose, and I was only trying something new. She concluded by telling me that she didn't think I needed psychiatric help, and should be sent home after I was discharged from the hospital. This was a major win for me because rehab was the last place I wanted to see myself in. All right, back to the fucking snorting the fiberglass cocaine. Oh my God, dude. Could you imagine? That sounds so painful. That's like fucking sniffing the most rawest, newest horseradish ever and just like taking a big sniff times a million times. If you guys have smelled like raw, fresh, well not raw, but fresh horseradish, you guys know what I'm talking about. It burns. It is like it's like wasabi almost, that if you were to taste it, it's like how you eat wasabi if you had too much but in your nose. But that, I can't imagine snorting fiberglass. That's just way worse. Oh my God. Unknown date, morning. I woke up to a doctor coming in and telling me he had great news. He said that I would be moved from intensive care to a regular hospital room. He assigned me to work on walking down the hall a few times a day. This was pretty cool to hear, but my walking was still extremely iffy. I could hardly make it to the new room that was only a few doors down, and now he wants me to walk down the entire hallway? I took the challenge with grace. Walking was something that I absolutely could not do without anymore. Sitting in bed all day for the past 3 or 4 days was not something I wanted to keep doing, especially with the zero mercy that the beds gave my back. Now just think about this. He was in the hospital for that long without basically moving ever. Like that's insanity. Alright, unknown date, nighttime. I was in my new room and I was still hooked up to a big IV machine. This had been the same one I had the whole hospital visit. Because of this, I was constantly being pumped with fluids. I had to pee before I went to bed and I decided I didn't want to walk over to the bathroom. Not just because I was weak, but because it's been the first time my parents had gone to bed in a while and I didn't want to wake them up. I decided to just lay back down and go to bed because I was fairly exhausted, having walked a little bit that day. I drift off to sleep into a dream world where I was running around frantically trying to find a bathroom. I had to pee in my dream, really bad. I found a restroom in the middle of a park and let the water gates open. I wake up to a very warm sensation on my leg. I immediately realize what has happened. I think, I really just pissed myself as a 17-year-old. Oh, they're only 17? That's even crazier. As funny as this may sound, this is how I knew I hit rock bottom and in need of some serious reform. I had laid thinking how I ended up in this situation. By now, my parents have told me what had happened, as well as a detective spoke to me, which was pretty pointless because I didn't remember anything. After rethinking everything I'd ever experienced, I turned to my parents and woke them up. I let them know what happened and a nurse came in. I explained that I didn't mean to, and she told me this was fairly normal considering the trauma my body had been through the last couple of days. This is probably what truly set me straight. Not that I was planning on going back to my old habits as soon as I got back, but the thought that I had peed the bed for the first time in almost 15 years was enough to humble me extremely. Hey, if you ever need help, just pee in your bed. Pee yourself. When was the last time I peed myself? It was probably when I was on that Hawaiian Baby wood roast trip. Oh my god, dude. I said it in the video, one of my first videos I made on my main channel. Dude, I couldn't go. I tried to go, and then finally at the end, like, I was still tripping, but like, you know, I just had to go, and it all came out while I was laying in bed. Best feeling ever. Unknown date, morning. The day after I urinated on myself was one full of walking and trying to eat the most of my meals as I could. This is the first day I actually started to get hungry, and the feeling of hunger was a godsend. Until then, I had to choke all my food down and do my best to keep it down. Now, I felt like I was actually perking up and was on the track to recovery. I also took my first real shower this day, which felt amazing, apart from the cold hospital water and barely being able to stand for 10 minutes straight. I started going to the bathroom regularly too, which was another good sign. The final day. On the final morning, the doctor came in and told me I needed to get an MRI scan to see if I sustained any brain damage. Now, the thing was that everyone was expecting there to be something off, but I felt no different than I had mentally than I had before the overdose. I wasn't convinced that I was completely fine because that seemed like such a stretch for almost being dead. I went to do the scan, which was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I've ever done. It was me not being able to move my body because I am locked in, as well as there was this thing around my neck that made it impossible for me to touch anything above my neck. They're also extremely loud. The machine made clicks and loud buzzes, which gave me the feeling of being inside of an alien escape pod. The results came back 100% fine, which was pretty much out of the question. It was an absolute miracle. January 28th, 2021. My dad and I are heading home as I have been discharged from the hospital. I was without my phone for the entire time I was there. I wasn't aware of the date until now. I saw it had been 5 days since I took the M30 pill. I still had 5 Adderall pills in a shoebox in my room still, and I didn't want my parents to find it and freak out knowing there's more drugs in their house. My dad asked if there were any other substances in the house he should know about, and I told him no. I was planning on going straight to my room and flushing the bag of pills down the toilet. Little did I know they had already searched my room extensively, and he knew that they were there. He told me about how he knew there was more than I was telling him, and the only thing I could think about is how it looks as if I'm trying to save the pills to use. That was just not the case. After this, home was all I saw for about 2 months. I wasn't able to do hardly anything for a really long time. I had my phone taken as well, so I couldn't drive or go anywhere. I was also forced into therapy, which was absolutely worthless for me. This changed my life for the absolute best. It taught me how fragile yet resilient life really is. This is without a doubt the worst and best thing that ever happened to me. My parents informed me that they had found me around 8 a.m. the next morning, which meant I had been unconscious and not breathing for around 8 hours. Rigor mortis had already set in as well. My parents told me whenever they moved me to wake up, my entire body moved, not just the arm that they nudged. It took 5 Narcan shots to get any reaction out of me, and when I did have a reaction, it was a seizure. On the way to my local hospital, I was being warmed up artificially. Once they determined that I needed to go to a bigger hospital about an hour and away, they shipped me there. 2 more seizures later, I arrived at the hospital in a bigger city, and by the time I got there, I was only 84 degrees. Wow. The doctors thought that I was going to die, especially when they started asking my parents about organ harvesting. It's been about a year and a half since this happened, and the only drugs I've done since then are LSD and weed. I will never do street pills again, and I never plan on doing it ever again. If you're going to do pills from the street, test your shit. Okay, that was a wild ride. I got to read that. That was definitely a good story. We're just under 30 minutes. That's crazy. All right, about just what I thought it was gonna be. Yeah, I think the craziest part was just being in the hospital for 5 days. I mean, there had to have been a whole bunch of fentanyl in that pill. I mean, that's just crazy. That is so just nasty. yeah. Sorry, I got this argument with Aries Spears. Well, argument, I mean, he responded a couple times, but now I was saying how he posts LeBron way too much, because he does, and people are like getting so mad at me for some reason. Like, I have no idea. I just got called a racist for supporting LeBron, so that just goes to show you how crazy Jordan fans are. Now, I love Jordan, don't get me wrong, but his fucking fans go crazy when it's against LeBron. They don't go after any other player, just him. So that goes to show you. But anyways, let's move on to the next story, as that was a pretty fun time. That was definitely an interesting story. All right, we're going to do, like, what is this? Withdrawals. We got 2 withdrawal stories. I'll read these for sure then. Precipitated withdrawal by throwaway 103754 2 months ago. So this is fairly new. Ooh, did I upvote the story? Shit. Nope. Also, my keyboard or my touchpad stopped working again, so I have to put this out. I'm gonna have to get a new computer pretty soon. I need an actual computer, not just a laptop. This happened maybe 6 months into my fentanyl addiction. My friend/runner, person I would give money and would go find a plug, had gotten some Suboxone strips because he was in a cessation program even though he was still using. He gave me 2 strips to use if I ever ran out of dope or money, so I took them home. Really, all I knew about Suboxone was that it had naloxone in it, but the naloxone is only active if you try to shoot it. I did a couple bags and thought to myself, why not use the subs and add on to my high? For those of you who don't know, Suboxone's main ingredient is buprenorphine. Sorry, Ozzy got prescribed that. That's funny. When he got that, I started laughing to myself because he had to get a tooth removed or something with his gums, but he lost a tooth and they had to fix. You know, it was bad. But yeah, when I saw that, I think I still have it underneath me. I don't know. I'm saving it for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah. Okay, I've always had this question though. When animals get prescribed something, like let's say a dog gets prescribed trazodone or gabapentin, is that the same thing as like a human getting prescribed? Because I've always wanted to know. You know, I'm sure a lot of you have asked that question for yourself. I mean, it's just like, I don't know why it would be different, but I feel like, you know, I don't know. Because, you know, animals get affected way differently than we do. Like, if a dog eats chocolate, they're going to fucking die, you know? But if I eat chocolate, I'm going to get a dopamine high. That rhymed, bitch. Ooh, I got so many bitches on my dick that I can't find how many bitches are sick. Yeah, cough on my dick. Yeah. All right. Fuck that. All right. So, yeah, answer that question for me if you guys know that. He was in cessation program. All right, wait. Okay, I was trying to find it. All right, main ingredient is buprenorphine, a partial opiate agonist, but it has a stronger affinity to the opioid receptors in the brain. So whatever drug you're normally using, oxy, heroin, and fent, the boop will rip them right off the receptors and put itself there. But since it's only a partial agonist, it doesn't activate the feel-good part of the receptors at all. And once, off the receptors at all. And okay. And since it rips off the stronger opioids, your body definitely feels it. Sorry, this whole story is written in one huge paragraph, so I'm losing my spot. So I'm sitting on my bed. I take a sub strip and put it on the inside of my cheek. My brother is in my room. He knows I use, so I wasn't hiding anything from him. And I laid down and watched some Super Best Friends play, RIP, videos. Suddenly, I start to shiver, so I pull up my blanket over me. But with the blanket on, I start to feel hot. And I mean, it literally feels like I'm in an oven. But when I remove the blanket, I'm freezing. There's no in between. I got that feeling for sure, bruh. That happened to me on Molly. Oh my God. Then it's like every sweat pore on my body went into overdrive. There was a wet spot on my sheets from where I was laying. I don't know what's going on, so I toss the covers off and I sit over the side of my bed. In my brother's own words, it was like raining from his face from sweat. Suddenly, I run to the bathroom because my guts are churning and I have to shit. When I do, I couldn't believe how much came out. I didn't think the human body could hold that much feces. Then I call 911 thinking something is seriously wrong. I tell them my address and ask them to tell the ambulance not to use a siren or lights because I didn't want to wake my grandparents. I threw on a jacket and began to walk outside, but my vision was swirling and everything felt like a dream. When I got outside on the porch, I laid down on the steps. The cold air was stinging, but my jacket was making me burn up. When the paramedics arrived, they asked what was wrong. I didn't want to tell them I was using dope, so I just told them the symptoms. They were both females, and God bless their souls, they didn't make me wait and answer questions. They got me right into the stretcher in the ambulance. They made me remove my jacket to take my blood pressure, and they said it was sky high. Without my jacket, I told them I was freezing, so they gave me 2 blankets. Between freezing and burning, I chose burning because it was easier to deal with. In the ambulance is when the thought loop started. My mind kept visualizing a spiral, and no matter how hard I tried to think of something else, my brain went back to that spiral. One of the paramedics kept asking if I felt nauseous at all, and I said no because I didn't, at least not yet. We got to the hospital. I was in such bad shape that I was brought straight to the ICU. No waiting room for me. They rode me on the stretcher all the way to the hospital bed. They parked the stretcher right next to the bed, so the paramedics said all I had to do was either lift myself over to the bed or roll onto it. I sat up to move myself, and that's when the nausea finally hit. I bounced over the bed and suddenly vomit shot out of my mouth. The walk was about 5 feet from the bed, and it came out so hard that it actually hit the wall. Earlier I remember hearing one of the paramedics say the one thing she can't handle is vomit. And once I puked, she turned foot and walked right out. The other asked if I was okay, and I told her yeah, and that puking made me feel a tiny bit better. The paramedics came back to have me answer some questions that I guess they ask everyone. Before they left, I apologized to the one who couldn't handle vomiting, saying I was sorry I puked. She said it was okay and they left. After that, it was hours of torture. Pulling up the blankets, pulling them off. My thought loop had changed to something like Tetris, but with triangles falling. A lady janitor came in to clean the vomit, and I apologized to her too for puking. She said, "Don't worry about it. This isn't the worst thing I've had to clean." I chuckled a bit, but went back to suffering. I might use that in the thumbnail. That's really funny, but it won't, get the scary part of it, but that's just too funny. I'd gotten to the hospital around 11 p.m., and it wasn't until 7 a.m. that I started to feel a little better. They gave me a bedside urinal. Oh God, urinal cakes. Because I couldn't even walk in the state I was in. I filled that thing up maybe 9 times. In the morning, they asked if I was on any medication. I told them my antidepressants, but they saw the opiates and Suboxone in my blood, so when they gave me my meds, they had another Suboxone. But this time, it was a pill. I was worried it would start my suffering all over, but I took it. Luckily by this point, it had actually made me feel a little normal. My body was still in shock, so it hurt to move, so they kept me for a few more hours. A nurse had brought me a cup of water, and I swear that water was the best thing I had drank in my life. Pretty soon I was back to normal, so they started the outgoing process. My blood also showed elevated level of pancreatic enzyme, so they listed my stay as pancreatitis. I got home, told my grandparents I had pancreatitis attack, and showed them the hospital paperwork. My grandma had pancreatitis, so she believed it. When I got to my room, I googled everything that happened to me and found out about precipitated withdrawal. To this day, I still have PTSD from that night, and I suffered precipitated withdrawal 2 more times after, once from a doctor who gave me Subutex, basically Suboxone without the naloxone, and told me it wasn't because precipitated withdrawal. I guess she didn't know it's the buprenorphine itself that causes PT, and another time in detox where they gave me Suboxone too early. Nowadays, I stay completely away from Suboxone or Subutex and stick to methadone, which doesn't cause PT. But ask any addict on opiates, and I'm sure you'll hear a horrifying story about precipitated withdrawal. Should I read that one more time? But ask any addict on opiates, and I'm sure you'll hear a horrifying story about precipitated withdrawal. I just kept messing up that word in the middle. All right, we got a good story. Someone commented, "Oh yeah, it happened to me once, and I went through days of withdrawal in just 4 hours. And yes, it was very sudden when it started, just an occupational hazard." Yeah, if you guys have precipitated withdrawal stories, submit them, because These are like the best stories to read in my opinion. Like I said before that it's like the antipsychotics are the best, and you know, other medications that you're prescribed, but like withdrawal stories are definitely up there. It's just very interesting to hear what people have to go through. You know, this guy just fucking experiencing all that shit in one night, basically. That's insane. But I feel so bad for that nurse who, or that paramedic who did not like vomit. I fuck with that. I fuck with that. She definitely has my sympathy. All right, this last one is actually a long one too. Not as long as the first story, but I guess we'll read it. Yeah. All right. Bromazolam withdrawal took me. Oh my God. Bromazolam withdrawal took me to a different plane of existence. So this is a benzo, if you guys didn't know. Anything with olam at the end or zalam, whatever, usually a benzo. I don't know if there's any other ones that end with, there's citalopram. No, that's pram. God, I forget I said that. But yeah, this is by Johnny Piper 4000. This is from 9 months ago. Thank you for submitting. And thank you to the other two people for submitting their story too. I recently was able to get my hands on a large amount of an unorthodox benzo called bromazolam. Looking back, I now know it was a bad idea to put my trust in a benzo that nobody I knew ever heard of, let alone tried it before. The first red flag that I should have heeded was the fact that some of the only information to be found in this drug is that it is found in the systems of overdose victims from cities that are experiencing a research chemical crisis. A research chemical crisis? A lot of cities like Philadelphia and Seattle are having this issue because the demand for real drugs is greater than the supply, so RCs end up filling the gaps. Anyways, I was too enticed by the cheap price for these pills as I was able to get them for less than $1 per bar. Ooh boy. And I'd really wanted to try benzos as they are one of the class of drugs I haven't really experimented with. Do not experiment with benzos. You're making a terrible choice. It's totally not worth it. I started abusing these bars as soon as I got my hands on them. I would take 1 bar per day, which is a huge amount to someone without a benzo tolerance. I probably was munching more bars when I was high, but I don't know exactly how much I did that as this drug, like most benzos, wiped my memory while under its influence. The regimen of carefree bar use went on for about 3 weeks. That was just hard to read at first. When I started to realize I had an issue, I was totally out of it all the time, and it honestly wasn't even that great. The bars just turned me into an NPC and made me a completely mundane person to be around. I decided it was time to stop and gave all my bromazolam to a friend to hold on to, as I didn't trust myself with them. This turned out to be a big mistake. Oh boy, you're gonna get him addicted too, or she. I had heard before that tapering off of benzos was important and going cold turkey wasn't safe, but I thought this wasn't necessary as I only used them for a few weeks. Oh yeah, it's gonna make a difference. Like if you use them for 1 or 2 days, no, but a couple weeks, come on. I thought that was for people who had been using for years, but it turns out large doses of benzos, regardless of how prolonged the use is, can cause drastic withdrawal symptoms as well. Yeah. Few weeks is a long time, especially doing a benzo like that. Yeah, like I said, a couple days probably won't do anything, but you will probably feel like shit. Not this much shit though. The first few days were not really an issue. I didn't really have anxiety or ill feelings. I felt like I was returning to my old self. But as I got to about the 4th day of the withdrawal, I started having a serious problem. I stopped sleeping normally. I got about 4 hours of shoddy sleep with some disturbing nightmares, which I didn't think too much about as I have had insomnia my whole life, and not sleeping well for one night isn't much of a rare thing. But the next night, on the 5th day of the withdrawal, I only got 2 hours of sleep. This was starting to be alarming, but I tried to ignore it and go about my life as per usual. But the next night, I only got 1 hour of sleep. I think you can see where this is going. After the 6th day of withdrawal, I stopped sleeping completely. I was still in denial at this point as to what was going on, even though it should have been completely obvious at this point I was going through some sort of withdrawal symptom. I ignored it and tried to sleep as if nothing was going. I would take over-the-counter sleeping aids like melatonin, valerian root, wild lettuce extract, etc., etc. All had zero effect on my ability to sleep. It was like shooting a .22 pistol at a tank. The medications didn't even put a dent in my feeling of an awake state. It felt like my brain was being forced to stay in one mode, when normally during the day you fluctuate throughout a spectrum of feelings of alertness to feelings of tiredness. My brain was completely static, which until you've experienced it, you can't know how truly terrifying it is. All right, what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, about the over-the-counter meds. If you want to sleep, take hydroxyzine. You'll fucking pass the fuck out. I still got to get that video. I'll probably do that next or in the next coming videos about my experience. And also my Vyvanse experience from high school. I want to put those two together. It had been about 72 hours since I had last slept that I started to experience some extreme audio hallucinations and feelings of dread and paranoia. I've done DXM, ketamine, LSD, mushrooms, and 2CI, but nothing came close to the intensity of these hallucinations. If I was doing something where noise would be present, like listen to music or walk around outside, there would be constant synth wave playing in the background, slowly modulating so I can hear the highs and lows of the synth wave. Or is it synwave? They put synwave, but I'm assuming it's synth, unless synwave is a thing. Maybe I'm just not informed on it. Well, there's sine wave, but that's math shit. I remember that. But yeah, no, I think they meant synth wave. Where the fuck was I? Hear the highs and lows of the synthwave. I would hear things move as if my cat was walking by, but when I looked, my cat was nowhere to be seen. The most dastardly part of these hallucinations is that they would get louder and more pronounced when I tried to fall asleep. While trying as hard as possible to fall asleep, I would hear the most annoying house/electronic dance music playing right in my fucking brain. The more I tried to ignore it and shut it out of my mind, the louder and faster the music got. I also would hear my music in my own style, as I am a musician, but I was in the style of when I can't get a song right and something sounds off, but I can't fix it no matter how hard I try. It started to seem like something was fucking with me. The dread and paranoia also made things that I usually would experience much more sinister and terrifying. For instance, I was listening to a true crime podcast about a serial killer. Serial killer had a house with all the windows blacked out and bolted shut, with the front door having multiple locks. He then kept his victims captive and tortured them for months. When one would die, he would put his victim in a food processor and feed them to his other captives. Oh my god. This horrified me and put me in a very fearful state of mind. Let me know which serial killer this is, and probably one I know, but I haven't heard anyone doing that. Very fucked up. I'd like to look into it. I'm sure Disturbin or Shrouded Hand did a video on it at this point. Shout out to them. Very good people. If you guys aren't prescribed, subscribe to them. You guys should be prescribed to them too. But yeah, subscribe to them. They do cool videos. Shout out Shrouded Hand, also getting in the Godzilla movie. That was fucking badass. He got a pin, his pin that he sells in the Godzilla movie. Like, that is so cool. The new one that just came out. Not Shin Godzilla, or Godzilla -1. That was the new one. Shin Godzilla was in like 2016. Still need to see Godzilla -1 really bad, and Shin Godzilla 2. But also, I want to ask before I move on here, would you rather do what this guy did for a few weeks and just get the craziest withdrawals ever, like the worst withdrawals, or would you rather keep them and not get withdrawals but get addicted? Like, what sounds worse? Like, I mean, I don't know how long they'd be getting addicted for maybe like a year or two. I don't know how long these withdrawals will go on for, but man, they both sound like terrible options. Probably getting addicted is worse, but having these withdrawals without any other drug that you can take, like, that sounds so bad. All right. I should have gotten a bar to taper with long before this point, but when you're going through benzo withdrawal, your brain isn't working correctly. Your thoughts aren't reasonable at all, and you only realize how stupid and irrational you were acting after you're better. I realize now this sounds insane, but at the time I thought the government was attacking me with energy weapons. I had heard people on the internet talk about them getting attacked like this, but they always seemed crazy, so I wrote them off. Also, Iran sending those drones to Israel, this shit, I mean, my god. U.S. please stay out of it. Please. We get involved way too much with other countries. Like, can you just back off for a second? Like, for real. But while this was happening, I was certain I became the government's next victim. I thought these feds were using energy weapons to hold my eyes still to keep me from going into REM sleep. I also thought they were the ones controlling the music in my head, playing it as loud and as fast as possible. I thought the synth waves were me picking up on the energy weapons frequency. My idea is that they were going to make sure I never ever slept again, making me go insane and destroying my brain permanently. So that's kind of like the Russian sleep experiment. At this point, I was panicking. I started looking outside my house for a white van filled with feds, but saw nothing. I had then decided that they were remotely attacking me, and the only way to avoid being tortured like this was to go up to a mountain canyon where there isn't any Wi-Fi. After I came back from the canyon, I decided I had to fall asleep by any means necessary, and got out the Benadryl. I thought he said got out of the Benadryl like he was in a Benadryl trip. I try to avoid Benadryl, as I think it's a terrible way to fall asleep, but I was desperate. This is where things got weird. Excuse me. I fell asleep after taking about 100 milligrams of Benadryl, and this sleep sent me into the weirdest brain state I've ever found myself in. I slept for about 2 hours, but the sleep was not relieving at all. I think my brain wasn't prepared to sleep, period, and forcing the brain to shut off with Benadryl just made me feel like I had a stroke. I couldn't really wake up from the sleep. Part of me knew I'd waken up, but it was like my brain was stuck in REM mode while awake, forcing me to live in a dream. In this state, I didn't have any idea who I was, where I was, or any of my past life up to that point. I lived completely as whatever scene or object the scene was focused on. For instance, I became a tree in the backyard of someone's house. It was one of those backyards that has trash and broken down cars scattered all over it. I had absolutely no understanding or direction, but I felt an extreme sense of confusion as to why I was a tree. I knew being a tree in a backyard was wrong for some reason, but I didn't know why it was wrong. I had nothing to compare this experience to, because at this moment, this was all I had ever known. I then became a car parked on the side of the road, just rotting there for all eternity. I lived as an empty field somewhere which looked like it was in Southern California. Nothing was anthropomorphized. Alright, let me make sure. I never read it that way. Anthropomorphic. Yes, I was like, I was not expecting that word. I was just like, what the fuck?
Anthropomorphize.
Anthropomorphized. Alright, anthropomorphized. Nothing was anthropomorphized. Everything was completely void and dead of all consciousness. I switched between object to object, place to place, wandering through objects stuck in my subconscious. None of these objects or places had a sliver of personal importance to me. They seemed randomly generated and alien. As I started to leave this state, I started to reclaim some understanding of what it was like to be human, but it was still not me. I became a man who was making toys and loved nothing more. I toiled in a toy factory, putting together toys made of springs and gears. I might have somehow experienced a past life, but I promise I have no interest in making toys. After about an hour of this state, I started to come to and remembered who I was, which was a major relief at the confusion of this fever dream was a hell in and of itself. Soon after this, I was able to get one of my friends to drop off a bar to withdrawal with, and these symptoms went away immediately. In fact, the withdrawal with the bar was very smooth. I didn't notice any negative effects when withdrawing the correct way. If you ever decide to go on a benzo bender like I did, please leave yourself some so you can taper off correctly, or you will go through hell. Alright, those were some great ass stories, some great withdrawal stories, hospital stories, whatever they were, man. They were all fucking great. And this is another 50 plus minute trip report to fall asleep 2 video. fucking amazing. Give this a like if you want to see part 6, volume 6, because it's going to happen anyway. So we're just going to do it anyway, so you better give it a like. Also subscribe if you want to. If you're new, subscribe to my main channel. If you're new, 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 if you're no. Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, baby. Go to sleep as you're falling asleep. You wanna suck on a little baby, yeah. Suck on that baby, my baby. I'm gonna suck on my baby, her pussy, her titties, her elbows, and her feet. Do 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 do. I love the feet of my baby. I tell her every day she's my baby. We met a while ago and I married her. I put my 2 knees down and I kneeled to her and I proposed so hard that the ring came out, but the waist it was in my ass. I got a little ring that was in my ass and I can't even remember where I went to class, but I told my baby that we gonna smoke this grass, but before we go gotta play that brass, yo. That's me. Call me Texas. This is my only performance ever. I won't come back again. Probably I'll just come back next time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to Frightening Trip Reports to Fall Asleep 2 Volume 3 and the Texas performance at the end. This will be an exclusive thing at the end of these videos. I'll probably forget I did that. But anyways, let's finish this, and I hope you are all asleep. And if you're not, thank you for listening all the way through, and thank you for listening to that performance I just put on. You know, I was just trying to like think of something that rhymed while I was, singing and shit, but tried my best. Gotta write it down next time and we can do it. I'll write a song. Like if you want me to write a song.